Hello and a very good evening, everybody. This is Dr. Roshali from the medical team of USV, wishing all the bright women out there a very happy Women's Day. A warm welcome to all the delegates for this session, Future Plus, with the theme Work-Life Balance for Women in White Coats, a topic that resonates deeply with many of us. In the demanding field of medicine, finding an equilibrium between our professional commitments and personal life is often challenging. Today, with our course mentor, Dr. Unni sir, and our eminent expert panel, we are going to explore the strategies to empower and support women in the field of medicine to thrive both personally and professionally. Dr. A.G. Unnikrishnan sir, needing absolutely no introduction, is a leading endocrinologist and CEO of Chellaram Diabetes Institute from Pune, a leading diabetes institute in India and an International Diabetes Federation certified center for education and excellence in diabetes care. He is also heading the newly formed Chellaram Diabetes Research Center. Sir has published the largest multi-center study of the subjects with pancreatitis and pancreatic diabetes worldwide, in addition to his more than 200 PubMed indexed publications. He is having numerous accolades to his credit, numerous awards, naming just a few: Jacob Memorial Prize for the Best Patient Care, DTech Award for Excellence in Diabetes and Technology, and VC Matthew Roy Oration. Sir has edited various journals like Indian Journal of Endocrinology and Metabolism and also the Journal of Thyroid Research and Practice. He is the editor-in-chief of Journal of Chronicles of Diabetes Research and Practice. It is great to have you here with us today, sir. I welcome you on behalf of Team USV and over to you for the further proceedings.
Thank you. I hope I'm audible and the slide is visible.
Yeah, perfectly, sir. Please go ahead.
So this is one of the most popular online programs that I've participated in, with hundreds of doctors participating. And that's because this is extremely practical, because as the dynamics of practice change, clinicians need to equip themselves with future-ready sets. So these were the first several seasons. The first season talked about how to improve practice, incorporating digital aspects to practice. The second season talked about a researcher's mindset, networking, collaboration. The third season talked about white coat investor as the doctor as an influencer, economics. Fourth season talked about emotional intelligence and pseudoscience and many things. And this is a fifth season. This is a finale of the season. And today we are going to discuss work-life balance. And very importantly, today is also International Women's Day. So we are going to have, after the initial introduction, we are going to have the panel discussion followed by a symposium on sulfonylurea and metformin. So this is, let me introduce the eminent panel for today. This is Dr. Beatrice Anne. She is Associate Professor and Head of Endocrinology at NIMS Institute, winner of the very prestigious Anil Sheth Award by the Endocrine Society of India. She has also received several articles, awards, and has published several articles. She is an excellent academician and a much sought-after speaker and a brilliant endocrinologist. The next panelist is Dr. Jayashree Gopal, who is trained in India and in the US in endocrinology. She's the director of the Diabetes Endo India Institute, and she's also founder director of the Diabetes Endo India Foundation. She's an endocrinologist and diabetologist at Apollo Hospital, Associate Dean for Teaching and Research at the M.D. Diabetes Center. She is the recipient of the Vocational Excellence Award, has been awarded the Sam G.P. Moses Oration, and is an excellent speaker, precise speaker, and also a good academician, and very clinical in her approach to endocrinology and much respected. The third panelist is Dr. Shehla Shaikh, again a good friend. She has been working in Saifee Hospital and Reliance Hospital, Mumbai. She has been principal investigator in several international clinical trials. She is an executive member of the Endocrine Society of India, executive committee member, very academic, several publications, and also author of the International Hajj and Diabetes Guidance Group. The next panelist and the final panelist, expert panelist today, is Dr. Roopali Khanna. Dr. Khanna is a professor at the Department of Cardiology at the SGPGI Lucknow. has received awards in various national conferences, has received grants from the ICMR, won gold medals during her MD, presented papers, published papers, has several research projects, and member of several societies, authored various books. It's an honor to have you here, ma'am, and it's a pleasure to have all the other panelists of today. So let me ask this question to the audience. So are you able to maintain a healthy balance between your work and your personal life? Yes, no. So while we wait for the answers, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, hand it over to the USV team. And let me go ahead and ask this question to Dr. Beatrice Anne. What is your opinion about a healthy work-life balance? And particularly, what challenges do women in white coat face in achieving that work-life balance, and how do you address that?
Thank you, sir. Very good evening to all, and wish you all a very happy Women's Day. It's indeed an honor to be a part of this prestigious panel. And answering your question, sir, we do have some unique challenges as women doctors. In the sense, we do have some gender expectations, and this is probably more pronounced in patriarchal societies. And when you look at women doctors as such, we cannot really tweeze out the homemakers from the doctors in us. And of course, men are now pitching in and doing their bit, but balancing these responsibilities and expectations from us, it can be challenging at times. And especially in those in medical or surgical specialties, which require long working hours. And we cannot deny the fact that gender disparities do exist in medicine, despite the progress that we have made. And especially for women, when it comes to pregnancy and parenthood, again, we have a struggle because most of the times we are in the training period or early career. And when we have demanding schedules, and we do have the physical demands of pregnancy, childcare, and all of this can be overwhelming for us. In order to overcome all this, we need a very good support system, both at home and as well as at work. And we need to also prioritize these things at every level, I would say, at work, at home. And we also need to look at our own well-being and our health, and our own well-being and personal life should never take a backseat. And so we need to set boundaries, I feel, and we need to respect those boundaries when it comes to work and personal space. And probably when we do respect, then we'll probably have a good work-life balance.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer, Dr. Beatrice. And here we have a poll result, and the overwhelming majority of doctors are saying that they are, am I reading it right? That they are all saying that they are able to maintain a healthy balance between work and personal life. Well, very surprising. It's 8:10 p.m. at night. I'm actually in my hospital in my cabin right now, and my family is waiting for me at home. I don't know if this is really work or life or personal or professional. Well, I think, but what Dr. Beatrice said is very important, because gender bias is inbuilt in all patriarchal societies. And let me also say that all societies are inherently patriarchal. The reason is because for centuries, because of the physical attributes of men, they were in the decision-making situation, and they tweak the rules so that everything is, the dice is rolled in their favor, so to say. The dice is thrown, but the dice is actually weighted in favor of the men, and that's very true. And we don't have to really hold back our words, because this is a meeting where people are just free to say everything which they feel within reasonable limits. And I agree with you that patriarchy is inbuilt. And let me ask Dr. Jayashree now. So how do people achieve work-life balance, especially women, and what support systems, personal and professional, exist? And how can a doctor, this meeting is attended by doctors who are young, and many of them are early stage in their careers. Some of them are very senior. But whoever it is, how can somebody completely struggling with this build such networks?
Thank you. First of all, good evening to all, and good evening to all listening in. I think our work is done, Dr. Uni. I was completely flabbergasted by the result of that poll, where they said 100% of them were able to achieve a work-life balance. I still struggle with it. Nearly 23 years into the practice, and I'm still struggling with it every single day. When I was looking at this question, one sort of incident very early in my practice came to mind. One of the gynecologists at Apollo, I remember she brought her little child. That boy was around 5 years old, and she was desperate because she was having a case waiting in theater. Her maid hadn't shown up, and she was calling around to her various relatives saying, can I leave the boy with you? Can I leave the boy with you? And and it really sort of brought home to me the importance of support systems. Dr. Beatrice was mentioning that. And I can certainly say that I would not be able to do what I'm doing without the support of, all the women in my life, particularly my mother, my mother-in-law, who helped a lot with childcare. I think at least in the initial years, no matter how much of other help you may have, unless you have that type of support, and it's very difficult in the early stages. I can tell you that when you're trying to also build up a practice and you have, babies at home, and I think the worst time, and I'm sure all the mothers here would agree, one of the worst times is when your child is unwell. And, you cannot take off and be with a child, and you feel so guilty, you're torn. Are we not doing the best we can as a mother? But you also have the full OPD waiting, and you have to go and see people. That's also a tremendous responsibility we have. So I think one of the things that helps is having strong support systems. Even if it is not family members, some of us may not be having family members to support us, but we have to build up a support system, whether it be friends or relatives, or and always have what I call a buffer. Have at least 2 people looking after, because when one drops out, you should definitely have a buffer zone so that you have somebody else to fall back on. Like I remember an aunt of mine saying, if at any time you need help, don't hesitate to call me, because she had been a working woman and she retired and she understood the difficulties of a working, and she said, anytime you need help and you don't get that support at home, call me. So like that, we need to identify. And I think that's important both personally and professionally, particularly for women. I think it's important that we have a place at work where we can, women just like to talk. We just like to talk it out. It's not like we are looking for solutions. I think that's one of the main differences between, I'm sure you know that, Dr. Uni, when I go to my husband with a problem, all I want for him to do is listen, but he's trying to find a quick fix for it immediately. And that's not what we want. We just want to be heard. So that way, having like a work environment where there are other women around you, I think helps. And for example, our endocrine society, I think, again, that's a wonderful place where a lot of us women get together and chat. And so support systems are very important. That's the bottom line I was trying to get to. Very, very important, both personally and professionally.
So I think as Dr. Gopal said, that support systems are available. Your family members, your colleagues, I may add both the male and female family members. And here's the next one, the colleagues, the endocrine society, the members of your peer support. And let's look at the second question. Are you satisfied with flexibility your job offers in terms of managing your personal commitments? Most of them are reasonably satisfied. And that shows to some extent that doctors are more or less a contented lot, because there are other sources of happiness that a doctor's life has. For example, treating patients, patients getting better, patients coming and expressing their gratitude. So there are lots of joys which more or less even out the emotional upheavals that people may face at home. There is some emotional positivity in our profession, which is not there for many professions. As I sit here, just a few blocks across, we have our finance department. And the finance team tells me, sir, आप तो केबिन में बैठ के patients को देखते रहते हैं, हम तो कंप्यूटर के सामने सुबह से शाम तक बैठते. So we do get, while just like we talk to people at home, as clinicians, we are also privileged because we can talk to colleagues, we can talk to our patients continuously. So you're continuously interacting with people, unlike people in sitting in front of a computer or sitting in front of Excel sheets and statistics and things like that. So in that way, we are lucky, I suppose. But I agree with you, things have to be much, much better. And that brings us to Dr. Khanna. And have you had any experience where somebody has mentored you early in navigating your career challenges? And how important is it for a young doctor to have a mentor who not just helps them design research studies or helps them in learning procedures and examination history and examination, but actually helping them cope with the life of a doctor? How important it is, and do you have any such experiences to narrate?
Yeah, thanks. Good evening, everyone. First, I want to congratulate to this for this forum where we doctors are being heard, and happy International Women's Day to all the beautiful doctors who are present with us. Like I'm the interventional cardiologist, so this is we all know that it's a very demanding schedules and a very demanding job because odd hours we are getting called for patients who are coming with acute MIs and primary PCIs. So be first and foremost, the representation of females in this field is very meager. If we see, they will find very few female interventional cardiologists coming in this field. So we need a good support system, not as and from a family part, because these are odd working hours, but we need a very good support system professionally also. Professionally, I would say we need a good mentors in the form who trust your abilities. Because these are the procedures which are very, they haven't asked you to show your abilities, you show your skills. So a mentor which helps us, who trust you, who can show you that these are the procedures which will be tackled by you. It should not be that, if you are having a low representation in a field, then you are usually easily sidelined. So you need a mentor who trusts you. Second, there will be a gender bias everywhere because if you're in a minorities, then there will be a gender bias. There will be a different, will be like Dr. Gopal said, if your child is sick, so because odd working hours, sometimes you have to leave the labs, you have to be there with your child. So the work-life balance and a good mentor who can support you in the sense that, okay, you go to take care, I'm here to support you. So both professionally and, who can help you in your critical times that, okay, this is the part which we can cover up for you. The third point is I would say the mentor helps us in your research works. If you have a good mentor, under that mentor, you can do good research, which will they have your good patient support, good patient data, and they can guide you in formulating of the procedures. Like if I will tell my initial working years, I had a small kid who was like when I joined this institute. So the working hours were a little tricky in our cases because you have to come in odd hours. But I got a very good mentor who was like, if it's an odd hour, if it's really needed, we will be called. Otherwise, still your kid is small, you can take care of the work which is there. So you need a good mentor, both professionally for case working, and sometimes you need it for personal also that, okay, can I take a leave early because my kid is small? So these things, a good mentor helps in you making you good professionally.
I think this is important. The only point I'd like to say is that, yes, these are acts of kindnesses that, okay, sometimes, we tell our colleagues, you're pregnant, you take rest. But sometimes what happens is that should not be as an act of kindness. It should be built into the system where that is their right to actually go ahead and take rest. I remember many years ago in 1995 when I was in Vellore and I was a registrar, MD, I was doing my MD, and I had a colleague, and the colleague was pregnant, and those days we used to have a pager. Even in those days, I'm talking about 1995, we had a pager. There was no mobile phone then, and the pager would bleep. So we used to tell her that, okay, you give us the pager and you take rest. You give me the pager and you take rest, because she is also doing her MD. I think she was doing her MD psychiatry at that time, and she was posted in medicine for a month. And we were together in casualty. I was telling her, you give me the pager. No, Unni, I'll manage. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. Finally, I said, you have to give me the pager and go and take rest. Then I didn't see her for about an hour. Then I said, oh, where is she? Oh, she must have taken rest. After some time, somebody told me she has gone and had and delivered now. So she went from the casualty. Straight away, she went and had a delivery, and we went and saw her there. So it can be very tough because of two things. The guilt of leaving the patient alone and going for something which is personal. Like Dr. Gopal mentioned, you have a list of people waiting in your OPD. Your child is also sick. What do you feel more guilty about is not the question. You're going to feel guilty either way. If you go to work, you'll feel guilty. If you stay at home, you'll feel guilty. Second question is, are you the only person feeling guilty? Shouldn't the other members of the house also feel guilty rather than making you feel even more guilty. So these are all situations which every woman goes through. And I feel that women actually have to work. I don't have any statistics, randomized control trials to prove it, but I feel that women have to work at least twice as hard, have to be twice as intelligent as men, and have to have twice as much perseverance as men to be even equal to them. And when we are talking about equal pay for men and women, we are not getting anywhere in the private sector. That's another thing to consider. Then I'm not talking about medicine, I'm talking about all the subjects. Medicine, it may not be that much. So I think these are some areas where we need to overcome men. And when I say we men need to overcome our biases and look forward. And so that brings me to Dr. Shaikh. How do you manage parental responsibility, old people at home, maybe, or somebody elderly, and caregiver responsibility along with your professional commitments, and what support systems have been instrumental in this regard? So, your views on that.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Happy Women's Day to everybody. And to be very honest, Uni, they say that there's a very old adage saying it takes an entire village to raise a child, or even to look after an elderly person. I mean, all my friends have alluded to the fact that you need a very strong support system. So I'm not going to get into that. On a personal level, Uni, if you ask me, we need to prioritize what is important at that point of time. And for example, I mean, when we heard this dilemma of work versus your baby who's unwell, you just need to prioritize as an individual what is more important at that point of time. And you need to get those priorities right as a working professional so that at no point of time do your kids or your elders feel deprived of your attention, okay? Because you have an equal responsibility over there. As a clinician, you definitely have a very great responsibility for your patients. But it was also equally important to me that I sit on that first bench in the annual day function and clap the loudest when my kid comes on the stage, because she's going to look out for me. Is my mom there? And that creates a lifetime of memories. That's what keeps you going, and that's what keeps your family going. Because finally, life is just snapshots. If you look back at life, you're going to look at snapshots. You're going to look at memories. So unless you prioritize that as an individual, you will not. I mean, there's no limit to what you would want to do professionally. It's unending only. It's like, that's the reason you're sitting in your chamber at 8. I'm doing pre-Ramadan work at 8 and trying to balance everything out. But when you talk about a support system, you need a support system which is equally caring, equally motivated. As Jayashree said that I had a very strong support system. And it involves not only in-laws, it could involve so many other people who are part. Your siblings, for example, it could be your sibling who's taking in all the kids out. There could be so many ways in which it could manage. And for that, what's also very important, only if you ask me, that you are also available when they need you. There's nothing like a one-way traffic ever in life. It's always a two-way lane. You cannot say that I'm going to take all the taking because I'm a professional and you do all the giving because you're a non-professional. A homemaker, I think, has a very tough job themselves. I think it's very important that we appreciate what they are doing. I mean, that small gesture, maybe taking just a Cadbury or a thank you cake home and saying, oh, wow, and hugging somebody and saying that just because of you that I'm doing what I can do, makes a very big difference. And I think as sometimes we forget these small things in life. We think it's only the big picture which matters. I think every individual who's been there with me in this journey, a big thank you. And there have been too many, to be honest with me. It could be friends at some point of time. It could be, the people who are working with you. I mean, I remember there have been times when, the staff outside has taken care of my baby, saying, okay, ma'am, you go in and see the patient. I mean, there have been times when I've put my kids to sleep at 10 p.m. and gone and taken rounds so my patients have helped me at that point of time. My patients, when I tell them, okay, I'll be coming at 12 midnight to see you because my kids are going to be sleeping at 10 p.m. and they have exams. Oh, wow, ma'am, please come at 12 a.m. Please come. The caretakers of the patients were like, ma'am, it's okay. You come, put your kids to sleep and come. So, it's so many people. It's your patients who help you out also. If you tell them my kid is not well, I really can't come in today, believe me, 90% of them will understand. Only 10% who would need, you have a colleague to look after them then. I mean, you tell your colleague, see, I'm stuck. Please look after my patients today, adjust them in your schedule. So there's so many small ways of doing it. I could go on and on about it, but I'm going to stop over here.
I completely agree, and I don't claim to be anybody very, very good person, helping out with the home and all that. I'm not at all like that. My wife is at home right now. I've got 3 senior citizens over 80, 85, and then my son. So, and my wife does almost everything, including when we go in the car. I hate to drive for 2 reasons. I'm a very bad driver. I drive either very slowly, because I'm thinking of some diabetes summit or something like that, or I'm so fast that I want to reach the destination and finish it off, so I take risks. So she drives. So whenever we go out, I tell people, oh, she's a fantastic driver. She drives so well. So she says, oh, he's saying that just to keep me happy, because only then I'll keep on driving for him. And that's very true at a very psychological level, because we tend to say women are superwomen, they sacrifice everything and put them on a pedestal. And when you do that, when you actually say that somebody is on a pedestal and that person is now supposed to be on that pedestal, even if that person doesn't want to be on that pedestal, nobody wants to sit on a pedestal and do all the hard work. How does that person look after their own health, their own personal well-being? That's a question for Dr. Beatrice. How do you prioritize your self-care, your well-being? So many demanding schedules are there at work, at the family, in the medical field, CMEs. How do you look at yourself? We are not going to sacrifice anything. Nobody sacrifices anything. So you have to take care of yourself. No point being said, oh, you are sacrificing your life for my family. But at the end of the day, you are the person in trouble. So how do you do that?
So well put, sir. It's so important that we take care of ourselves. I feel we need to set boundaries, and we need to learn to say no and not feel guilty about it, because then we become overwhelmed and sort of go into burnouts. And I feel spending time with family and friends again is very important for emotional well-being. And that way, I feel endocrinology conferences are a great help, because even tomorrow we are all women endocrinologists going to be meeting tomorrow at Bangalore. So we're all looking forward to it. So this is our way of unwinding. And physical self-care again is very, very important. Now I've managed to take about 1 hour every day for myself, for a jog or for working out in the gym. And I feel we should not let go of our passions, say reading or writing or art or whatever it may be. I think we should not let go of them, because those the passions also help you sort of be emotionally well. And I think when you need support, I think there's no harm in seeking support, even if it is professional support. I think it's still okay. So when you're like really burnt out, you need a way to let out things. I think we should come out of it and then just let go and speak to somebody about it. And as women, I feel we should not judge other women, because I don't know what's going on in the other person's life, and that is so important to be supportive of other women as well.
Well, thank you for that. And through 2-3 things. One thing I always in my own family, my wife is also working. She's an ophthalmologist. She's a retina specialist. So few things that I always allow her is that, or rather we have no compromise, is that she has to work, whatever the situation at home is. If I have to chip in or somebody else has to chip in or whatever systems have to be built, going to work is sacrosanct, and that we never compromise. Whatever said and done, she cannot not work, because I know from my wife, her work is her oxygen. She loves working. And the second thing is that if she needs to go for a CME or a meeting or to go and speak at a meeting, she has to go. That's it. The whole system has to be geared up and adjust so that she's able to do that. And that's sometimes it's difficult, because I'm also traveling, I'm also working. But those are 2 things which we never compromise on, that she has to go for every meeting that she has to go to or she wants to go to, and she has to, whatever the situation, right from day one, even when my child was little, she is going to work, and we put everything else in place so that she has to do that. The other thing is that the society, the culture and society also impact our choices. It's not just the husband and the wife. There are so many other people, family, neighbors, expectations from a lady doctor or a male doctor, that a man has to be the earner and the woman has to sit at home and cook. And then now this woman is going out and working. What is your view, Dr. Gopal? Cultural, societal expectations impact. And before I start, I must tell Dr. Beatrice Anne that I was also called to this Bangalore meeting of women in endocrinology, but it's my son's exam going on, and my wife has put an embargo on my travel. She said, till the exam is over on 11th, I'm not supposed to leave. Not that I'm doing anything, I'm actually here. But my very presence gives my son some confidence, he's around. So I may not be sitting and teaching him, but that's why I told Dr. Chitra that I'm not coming to Bangalore, because this is important, right? This is sometimes you have to take a call. Well, you have to do this. There's no compromises. So, Dr. Gopal, what is society and culture trying to tell you, and how do you forget all of them and look at your choice?
So I think a lot of it, like what Beatrice was saying, these expectations are sometimes things that we put on ourselves. A lot of the women who become doctors are very driven, very committed, very passionate women. I mean, they've been passionate about various things in the beginning of their career. By the time you reach about 15, 20 years, you're pretty much the only thing you do is your work, and you're driven. But you also want to be a good mother. You also want to be a good wife. And when you're sort of holding so many balls up in the air, that's the way I visualize it. When you're holding so many balls up in the air, it's inevitable that either you are going to fall or one of the balls is going to fall. One thing I have learned over the years is to know when I burn out. I think that for me is a very important takeaway. And I've several times, like what Beatrice was saying, it was important. As a junior doctor, I've gone, and in the middle of my pregnancy, I was working in the UK. I went and I cried to my professor, and he was very nice about it. He said, Jayashree, you're just overworked. Just take a breath and stop. And and then once it all came out, I was okay. So now I've learned to recognize when we get irritable with patients, when we do not want to go out and meet our friends, when we do not want to take care about our appearance when we go to work. We just throw on anything and you just go to work, you're not bothered. For me, at least personally, these are all very important signs of burnout. And over the years, I've realized that it's important to carve out a time for myself and also to let go of certain things. You were talking about expectations. My kids don't even expect me to cook. I mean, I cook maybe, I think I know how to cook like some 2 dishes or something, and I make that once a week, and that's it. So my kids don't, thankfully, I've had, supportive relatives who cook. So I don't know how to cook. I've let go of that. I've stopped having this vision of myself as a superwoman cooking, and, so I think at some point in time, you make those compromises because you need to have that time to yourself and not feel like you're a failure because you've let one of the balls drop. Like Dr. Shehla was saying, which is the most important at that point in time? And you're taking care of yourself, preserving your health, preserving your sanity, means sometimes letting go. My house may be dusty. In fact, it's dirty. I try and take care of it as much as I can. For me, like the kitchen and the bathroom needs to be very, very clean. So I take utmost care of it. The rest of the house, not so clean. Well, I can't help it. So I'm just saying, so these are all the compromises that we make, all the time, trying to let go of the expectations that we have put upon ourselves.
I completely agree, because if you look at us when we work, and that's probably true for men and women, that there are a lot of pressures at work. And when you come home, for example, I not just see patients, I also look after the institution, and all of you have so many things to do. And when we come home, we have what is called, they call the air hostess syndrome. You have to be good and smiling at work, but when you come home, you release all your anger and everything. And now I'm 54, so I can more or less manage all these things. When I come home, the first thing I do is I sit quiet for some time. I take a warm water bath. I read something I want to read. Then only I begin talking to people around me, because the pressure has to really come down. That energy level has to really come down because otherwise you will lose your cool, or you might just not say what you might say something you're not supposed to say. But this is okay for people like us who are already in their 40s, 50s. But what about young women or young men or young women entering the healthcare, and suddenly you have a child and you have to work? So, Dr. Khanna, question to you is that what advice would you give a young woman entering the healthcare field, managing both the career and personal? And not everybody is gifted with a husband or or in-laws or family which is extremely supportive. There may be people without a support system and they have to have a nanny or somebody looking after the child. What advice do you give such a young woman in the early stage of their career?
I agree with you because, like, for us, we have a good support. We are now mature enough. Our kids are a little older. But young women who got recently married or, having a small kid, they have different responsibilities with them. So, like, for young women also who do go for a choice, like which field of branch they should choose for medicine, I always say follow your heart. Don't get influenced by other people. Okay, don't take a clinical branch, go for a non-clinical branch. You will have less work, stress, less working hours. But if you're not interested in non-clinical branch, don't go for it. Follow your heart. If you think you are good for a clinical branch, go for it. Because then only you will enjoy your work. Because if you don't enjoy your work and you take a branch in which you are not interested, all frustrations will come out on you. So take a branch, surround with yourself with a like-minded people, in which that means that you should have a good support system in your professionally also. So branches which you like to work in. Like I will tell my example. I belong to a very medical. My family doesn't have any medical background. So when I had a choice to choose between a clinical and non-clinical branch, so most of the people who said take a non-clinical branch, it will be a relaxing branch. But I knew that if I don't have contact with the patient, I won't be able to enjoy the field of medicine which is there. So follow your heart. And young women should understand you can't have it all. So this thing, they should understand that you cannot have your good professional, you cannot top.
I think we lost Dr. Khanna. Are you able to hear Dr. Gopal, Dr. Beatrice? No. Well, I think we'll carry on because I think she would probably join back, but I completely agree with her that it is tough on a young person. And I just want to remind the audience and everybody that we are close to the highest that we've seen in terms of attendance. We have more than 1,100 doctors. Please carry on, Dr. Khanna. So we have close to 1,100, more than 1,100 doctors listening in at this stage. Dr. Khanna, we lost you for a few moments. Could you come back and just quickly, right now we are saying, I think 1,500 plus doctors, and that's sort of a record for this talk show. Dr. Khanna, we lost you for a few moments, but please to come back and quickly summarize what you said.
So I think we just should, follow your heart, prioritize your thing. You cannot have it all. Start your day that these are the lists which I have to do. Make it a point that, okay, if we are able to 10 lists, we are able to finish the 3 lists, we should be happy with it. And have a good support system. Not lucky enough to have a good family support, have good friends, those who who are facing the same challenges. Make good friends which you have, having different between the quality of life they are having or different problem in your professionals. Once you vent it out, that, have good mental support in that cases.
I think support systems are very important. And if you ask me, in India, we are lucky that we are in India, because in India, it's very easy to get different. So first of all, families are very closely knit. The second thing is that, you can easily get people to work in your house to either to look after the child or to clean the house, to wash the clothes. All this is not very common in, say, other countries where you will not get servants to come and cook for you or have a driver and things like that. So, but I think things are changing in India and abroad. I remember when I went abroad, I stayed with my sister. My brother-in-law got up at 5 o'clock. He made breakfast. He went for a run. And by the time I got up at 7, he was ready with the breakfast for everybody. And my sister all got up late. And then, that's how things are. So I think trends are changing. men are more and more involved, and the younger generation is much more involved. Males are much more involved in the family than the older generation. I like to believe so, at least. But let us ask the expert, Dr. Shehla Shaikh, what is the future now? Because number of doctors are going to increase, number of patients are going to increase. How will women cope up with healthcare in future? And how should both individuals and organizations prepare for the future of women in medicine?
Uni, you said something very, very important. You said that women are no longer, supposed to be the epitome of caring and the epitome of, sort of sacrifice, etc., etc. I think we've evolved even as a society. I mean, you rightly said that we don't ever, the previous generation, which I'm the previous generation ever, taking, part in the kitchen. Fortunately, the generation next, at least I know for a fact that my son and all his friends, do cook in the kitchen, do help with the cleaning, and do it without feeling embarrassed or feeling awkward about it, you know. So, and I think women also, as Jayashree rightly said, has moved from the point of time where it was like, okay, I have to do it all. And irrespective, and Beatrice put it very well when she said, prioritize your health, prioritize your passions, prioritize what you want to do in life. So I think we are reaching a point where we are going to be able to balance it out much better. And the reason we're going to be able to balance it out much better only is because as a society, our aspect, our thought processes are broadened. And this goes to all the fantastic men in our lives also. I believe that I am talking to you only because I had a very confident father who allowed me to do what I had to do. Followed by, because we all know, whether I like it or not, the fact remains that as daughters, we do, unless you have a father who either, I believe more than your husband is a father who believes in a daughter, to allow a daughter to grow the way he wants her to grow. So it is a question of, not a single person, but an entire society changing their thought processes. They're changing, understanding that a woman is 50% of society, and it's only when you together walk the walk that you're going to actually, be where you want to be. And that thought process is definitely improving. Having said that, as far as support systems from organizations, support systems from individuals, I think organizations also are slowly moving. For example, now organizations are giving paternity leave. I have colleagues who are having 6 months paternity leave at this point of time, and who are really actually a hands-on father. He has not taken paternity leave and sitting in the hall and not anything. Frank, honestly. So organizations also recognizing that it is, the father looking after the child is as important as a mother bonding with the child. So organizations are moving in that direction. We have organizations now with creches available in the workplace. We have organizations where the mother is allowed to breastfeed in the workplace. You have organizations which are providing help, allowing you to work from home. So you are having, people, organizations who are increasingly aware, who are increasingly getting sensitized to the fact that the women task force also is as important as the men task force. There cannot be a gender bias over there. But at the same time, considering the special needs that the woman has at different points of time in life, those needs are being increasingly, we may not be where we want to be, we may not be still in utopia, but the society is not actually ideal. We all know that. But we are taking baby steps, and I think these baby steps are very important for us to become more evolved. So if the change takes place in you, once you once you express what you need, sometimes, Uni had this very interesting conversation around 3-4 years back with, my daughter. And she told me, and there was something which I said, "Arey, sweetie, I wanted to do this, and I didn't do it." Say, "Mom, you never expressed you wanted to do it." How would we know that this is what you wanted to do? Unless you open up and say that this is what I think I could possibly want to do. Because we just don't think that way. We've never said, this is what we want. So when you've not said, you don't know what the response is going to be. The assumption is, no, I am supposed to do this, I am supposed to do that, I'm supposed to stick to this path. And half the time, because you not express something, so we are increasingly getting a voice of our own. the good part only also that women are becoming women's good friends. There's no law. I think, that's also a very important aspect that has changed. I mean, mother-in-laws are no longer their daughter-in-law's enemies, to be honest. We've moved away from there. Mother-in-laws are also becoming their daughter-in-law's friends, and that's vice versa. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about, I mean, all aspects. I mean, women are also realizing that we are not competing with each other. The only person you compete with is yourself. I mean, there's no other human being you're competing in the world with. And when once you are realizing that there's so much everybody, and everybody is so different in their own ways, that you can afford to, then you can, afford to talk about it, afford to express what you want to do. You make a little change, your family makes a little change. Finally, it is going to ripple into society, finally into community, and finally into all those aspects where we want these changes, because if a woman is happy, the entire household stays happy only. I'm sure when your wife is unhappy about a small thing also, you're like, oh my God, what just
Yeah,
happened?
yeah,
And my world
absolutely.
collapsed. So I think that's all.
Yes, you said it. I think many a time, as you said, if you don't open up and say things, people assume that you are happy in your contented situation. That hasn't changed yet in the country or in the world, but probably that will change in future where people instinctively know that no, you don't have to say it. We know that this is what you want to do. So I think it's very important in society that women open up and talk now, because that's been something which will continue to bring the harbinger of change. And Dr. Jayashree Gopal, would you like to talk about, because you worked in India and US, and I've just visited countries outside India. I haven't stayed outside India for long periods. So how is it there? And is the situation much better in terms of lady doctors being able to work? I'm not talking about Indians in the US, because I can understand that it's very, very, very difficult for an Indian lady doctor in the US who has just reached there as an immigrant to bring up a career. But even for the US people who are born and brought up there, how easy or how difficult is it for them?
Actually, it's far more difficult for them. Far more difficult, because they just don't have the support systems, or not just the support systems, the sort of the thinking that here, in a way, we take our parents for granted. And we're also preparing for, like when our sort of grandchild comes, we think mentally, maybe we're going to look after them, if they want us to. But we certainly, I think our generation, we took our parents for granted. We assumed that they would be there to look, but that is not the case, obviously, there in other countries. They're very independent. They leave the house from a very young age. They live by themselves. And there is a lot of hands-on care from both the parents, because childcare there is also very expensive. So invariably, what happens is, if both the parents are working, they'll end up spending a large chunk of their money on childcare. Children are put in creches from like a very, very young age. I would say it's far more difficult, and women doctors there have a much more difficult time managing everything. Plus, they don't have all of the support systems we have. I remember a consultant of mine in the UK, the one thing she was most envious about when I was telling her about how we live in India, I said, we have like this, like the Iron Man, the Istriwala, whatever you call
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah. So I said, we'll just give him the bunch of clothes and we get it back freshly ironed. And he said, I'll just fly down there. I'll just get my clothes, fly down there and get it ironed and take it back. So I'm saying all these things around us, which make our life so easy, they don't have access to any of that. And they're doing their housework, and they're, doing all the childcare, and they're expected to maintain absolutely impeccable standards like we all do at work. And it's just not easy at all. It's absolutely not easy.
Completely agree with you. First of all, the availability of hired help at home, cooks and people to clean, that's one. Second, the joint family system, which everybody comes in if there's a problem and even stays together to solve the issue. And you mentioned about coming back to India and getting clothes ironed. Well, I will not mention the doctor, but once I met a doctor, an Indian doctor in the US, and not even in the US, in another country, and that doctor was coming to India for a week and then going back. So he's got so many suitcases. I asked him, sir, आपने तो इतना suitcase क्यों लिया? He said, Unni, what I'm going to do, these contain all my old clothes, okay? I've packed it. Now he's got a frequent flyer card, so he can carry more luggage or whatever it is. So he brings all these clothes to India, gets it washed, dried, and then he takes it back by flight there. Because anyway, I'm coming, I might as well do all these things. So then I can appreciate that actually how privileged we are in India, because things we take for granted are there. I think we have the Future Ready Symposium where I'm going to ask Dr. Shehla Shaikh and Dr. Khanna and Dr. Gopal. But before that, I'd like to say that women have to work harder. But it turns out that as patients, women are less likely to get guideline-directed therapy than men. There are studies that even cardiovascular interventions are late. The time from the chest pain to bringing to the hospital, that's delayed in women. Women less likely to get guideline-directed therapy. Even in science, technology, engineering, medicine, even in academics, women less likely to be called to speak at conferences. There are many what we call manels, MANELS, where there are no women but only men in the panel. So that is also very common. So, and interestingly, research shows that women are better doctors, they are better at screening, they are better at diagnosis, they are better at therapy. There are many, many studies showing that. And I just tweeted about it today, about the summary of those studies, that women are better doctors. And despite that, women continue to struggle with work-life balance. But I think that as we discussed, things are changing and we men are becoming more empathetic, more better at it. And let's hope that we continue to do that. And let me now go. So thank you all for joining. And now we go to the final part, which is the Future Ready Symposium. As I said, this has been one of the highest attendances in these seasons, and almost more than 1,500 is very good indeed. And let me ask all the panelists, let me begin with Dr. Jayashree Gopal. Now we are going to switch tracks and talk about sulfonylurea, glimepiride, and the modern sulfonylurea situation in the light of the emergence of new classes of anti-diabetes drugs, which means GLP-1s and SGLT2s. How important are sulfonylureas in today's practice, and what are their advantages and considerations that you put in when you see a patient requiring a sulfonylurea?
So I think the fact that we are even saying what is their position means that they're here. And I think they're going to be here to stay for, at least for as long as diabetes care is going to exist. So we all have people in whom nothing works but sulfonylureas. And they continue to work in some people for many, many years. The main thing that I look at when I start a sulfonylurea is what is this person's risk of a hypo, or how much is this person going to suffer if he has a hypo, he or she has a hypo. And then I sort of choose the dosage or the combination and whether it is sort of an extended release or a modified or not. So depending on the sulfonylurea and depending on the clinical situation, I decide upon the dose and I choose the molecule. And of course, always we have to look at the renal function and also sometimes modify the dose. So yes, I do keep in mind the risk of a hypo. I do keep in mind the risk of weight gain. But having said that, honestly speaking, I think, at least about 50 to 60% of people with diabetes, if not more, will only be controlled if you continue them on a sulfonylurea. That fact still remains. No matter how much we talk about other molecules, unless we add this equal to insulin in terms of the almost equal to insulin, I would say 1 to 1.5 to 2%, sometimes blood sugar lowering, you're not going to get with any of the other medications. So definitely have a role to play, and it continues.
I think they said that sulfonylureas are going to retire or get retired, but they've never retiring and they're not gone away. And that's because they're still very useful drugs and cost effective. Dr. Beatrice, what is your opinion about sulfonylureas, especially the modern sulfonylureas like glimepiride, especially in the era of the GLP-1s and the SGLT2s? What role do they have to play?
Sir, if you ask me, ever since the newer drugs came into the market, I think every other diabetes webinar has been about arguing about whether they're going to, sulfonylureas are going to stay, or whether these newer drugs are going to replace, which comes first, which comes second. So this has been going on and on. But I think sulfonylureas are not going to go away anywhere, because as we know, the pathophysiology of diabetes, if you look at it from, it was 3 and then it became 8 and then became 11 and 13. So we need to target most of the processes at least. So, and of course, the newer drugs give cardio protection, renal protection, but we cannot forget the fact that sulfonylureas are very potent drugs, anti-hyperglycemic drugs. So as endocrinologists, I think hyperglycemia comes top on the list for us to treat. So that way, sulfonylureas are not going to go anywhere. And the modern sulfonylureas, of course, compared to the older generations, they have a lesser risk of hypoglycemia, lesser weight gain. So I think the modern sulfonylureas are here to stay.
Thank you. I completely agree. And may I ask Dr. Rupali Khanna now, you are a cardiologist, and your views on sulfonylureas. We have been using it for decades. What do you think? Do you use them in practice? And how important are they?
So if you ask me, from my MD days, they were like sulfonylureas were the like first choice of drugs along with metformin. But if you see the recent 5 to 6 years data, especially from being a cardiologist, I would say we have a very strong data with SGLT2, the cardiovascular benefit, the CVOT terms which we are taking with newer anti-diabetics. But I agree with other panelists also because these are not a very good glucose lowering drugs. So if you want to have a very good control of a patient is very uncontrolled HbA1c and it's having a CAD, so we want to target about 6.57. So definitely sulfonylurea still has place in these cases who are uncontrolled diabetics. In these cases we use, but yeah, definitely if they are on a borderline, we try to go for a non-CVOT protective drugs. I think sulfonylurea will not go anywhere. They will stay, despite showing not very good CVOT benefits in the diabetics.
I think well said. Sulfonylureas are not going away. Dr. Shehla Shaikh, would you like to come in and talk about sulfonylureas and your view in practice?
I agree with all the panelists, Uni, that sulfonylureas I don't think are actually going to go anywhere. In the Asian context, they are very good drugs. Apart from being cost effective, they are very, very, the efficacy wise also very, very good drugs. The newer SUs have a very low incidence of hypoglycemia, especially, for example, in Ramadan also, we do continue using extended release gliclazide also. And glimepiride also, as far as I'm concerned, are drugs which, if used safely, selectively, intelligently, the risk of hypoglycemia is much more lower. We have a younger population. We have a population which, develops complications much more earlier. So though we continue using our SGLT2 inhibitors for, and especially now that they become cost effective, I use SGLT2 inhibitors more because of the cardiorenal benefit which they offer. But along with the cardiorenal benefit, I also need that glycemia to be well controlled. And because the bottom line remains that, in the entire cardiorenal story, we've also seemed to somewhere what the UK PDS said, for every 1% reduction in HbA1c is going to translate into reduction of micro and macrovascular complications. And that's where SUs really help us in a very big way. And even when the patient's on insulin, only I do continue SUs, even if it's in a lower dose, because for the local intrapancreatic effect also, because of it does help me over there also. So I'm pretty happy with continuing in using them safely, effectively in the dose which is required, with a very careful watch for, expected hypoglycemia. You can almost be able to say which patient is going to go into hypo if you're using sulfonylurea sensibly. Definitely here to stay. I don't think they can be sort of, written off. Not yet.
I'm told that now we have crossed 1,800 doctors right now as we speak, and that's one of the records here, and that is thanks to
only your charisma
and the spectacular panelists that we have. Absolutely. Women's Day is alive and kicking even at night. So the day has now turned into night and still it's day, and may the sun continue to shine on women. But coming back to the topic, sulfonyl, we know that metformin followed by SGLT2, GLP-1s, SGLT2, GLP-1s, they have cardiorenal benefit. We know that. But early use of low-dose sulfonylureas are important, and that's going to stay for some time. We have been told that hypoglycemia is a big problem, but we know that people are not dropping down everywhere with hypoglycemia. We have been using it for years. The second thing is that the bigger problem in our country is hyperglycemia, not hypoglycemia. First, you have to reach normal blood glucose to get hypoglycemia. And most of our patients, the blood glucose is high. So sulfonylureas, excellent drugs, time-tested drugs. We have evidence of their effectiveness. Even indeed versus DPP-4, we have an equivalent study versus linagliptin showing you sulfonylureas do not cause beta cell exhaustion, or at least do the same as DPP-4. So excellent time-tested, cost-effective drugs. Let's continue to use them. And on that note, let me hand over the mic to Dr. Ashley. On behalf of Dr. Jayashree Gopal, Dr. Beatrice, Dr. Shehla Shaikh, and Dr. Rupali Khanna, let me thank Dr. Ashley and the USP team for involving us in this wonderful discussion on International Women's Day. And over to you, Dr. Ashley.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Randy, sir. And you were amazing as always. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and sharing your valuable thought with us. Thank you so much, the expert MLR and Dr. Palima, for being so explicit and sharing your knowledge, time, and wisdom with us. And dear delegates, thank you for joining. We had more than 1,800 delegates. And last but not the least, thank you, digital team and the team USV. Without their support, this wouldn't have been possible. So thank you, everybody. Have a great night ahead, and wishing everybody once again a very happy International Women's Day.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Good night. Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you tomorrow.
So much.
And thanks to all your families for making this
Thanks,
possible.
ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Good night.